Okay, I think we can get going. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, let's go ahead and get going. I think you know who I am, and so I will skip an introduction. We've been talking about Chan and different features about Chan. So first of all, let's start with a vow and the four great vows. So, vow, four great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. It's kind of interesting because these four great vows are vows that really symbolize the transition from the Theravadan teachings to the Mahayana teachings, where the goal primarily in the Theravadan teachings was to reach a nirvana, whereas the Mahayanas had a greater altruistic goal of delivering sentient beings. Now, in this delivery of sentient beings, the Mahayana Buddhists were careful not to create the idea of an individual ego, personality, or life and being, but referred to them as illusory beings to maintain the consistency with the idea of ekayana, which is one mind. Later, ekayana, the idea of one mind, with some masters, transitioned to no mind. And it's very funny because whether one says one mind or no mind, it's the same thing. And I think I wrote a poem a long time ago which ended up just saying, never mind. In other words, if you're confused with it, don't worry about it. Just never mind it. It doesn't matter whether it's no mind or just mind. The idea is that this mind is not something that one can call anything, whether it's no mind or just mind. The idea of suchness is in this way. I've been reading this week of many different scholars that have talked about the transition from Theravadan to Mahayana, and by and large, a lot of the scholars don't know what they're talking about. They know parts of it. They know historically what was happening, but when they start to surmise about the fallacies or the weaknesses in the practice, as if they're a philosopher looking at it and looking for holes in the practice, what they miss is the esoteric side, the side of the gnosis, this direct connection, which arises from emptiness. So they can postulate about theoretical emptiness, but they can't go further. It's just not possible for them to do that. And so that they create this idea of putting something into working within this box. And it was interesting. I don't know if Michael is here tonight or not, the quantum physicist, but I had sent him something. It was in regards to actually a commentary on the perfect speaker, and in terms of an audiophile forum, and some quantum mechanics person wrote back and said, "You can't do that. You can't come up with a perfect speaker within the box. That has to be something outside of the box." In terms of that, because it has to contain the whole. And so when I sent it to Michael, essentially it was using that as an analogy to say the same thing in Chan, that if we postulate about something within the samsaric realm, we only know samsaric realm. We've never experienced anything beyond it. When we begin to change that, and begin to get realizations, kind of a peek the cracks in the egg shell, then all of a sudden there's a different manner in which things are reflected in mind. When we're looking at it from the samsaric view, we reflect everything from the idea of, in comparison to other samsaric objects, this is better, this is wiser, this is deeper, this is whatever. And the masters would say there's nothing that is sacred about it or profane. It just is, and we step away from that. And when I say we, it's not we, the ego, but mind just simply becomes resolved and it sees things as it should. And in this, it's something that, in terms of the teachings, which, as you know, I say there are no teachings, but it is whatever I say that helps you lead to a realization, then that is something that we have to kind of work on. But it's not very easy, and it's not something that I can sit here and explain and say, you know, these are the fundamentals, and if you know all of this, you will get a good grade. There's no good grade here. There's just simply, if there's an ability to transcend the idea of this samsaric world. So for Chan practitioners, it's a bit frustrating because that penetration like that does require a great degree of sincerity and faith in mind, and exertion, and also the real how would you say, unending application of the practice. I don't practice 24/7. If I did, I'd probably make more progress, but I do practice quite a bit. And I noticed that the more I practice, the better it gets. And the more you practice, even in that present moment, the mind becomes more settled, more quiet, and things move along a lot easier with it. So the samsaric byproduct benefit is that the world becomes a little easier to navigate. And the ultimate benefit in the absolute is that one can navigate out of the samsaric realm, yet you straddle samsara and mind, and you straddle it in a way in that samsara is not other than created by mind. And that's a very, very important point. And this week I've been talking to a lot of you and talking about that, know that everything's created by the mind. And when we talk about this in terms of created by the mind, this is what you really have to contemplate, because as you begin to see this, you begin to see that that everything around you is connected. And this is an important aspect of our practice, which is a pratika samappada, causes and conditions never fail. And so when we begin to understand this interconnectivity to everything, then it helps us put down the idea of a subject and object observation. Likewise, when we sit to meditate, we are no longer reaching for something or pushing something away. We can just simply sit to meditate. And it doesn't require you to sit for 2 hours, 3 hours, or whatever. Again, if you can do that, great. And if you have the opportunity at a retreat, great. But even in a short setting, one can get into a deep samadhi state if they practice enough and understand the principles and the elements of what goes into to a proper meditation, and as able to just calm down, calm the mind, quiet, just let it be. So when we quiet the mind is not quieted just by us repulsing thought. We can discern thought as thoughts come up, but it is the mind that's discerning it, not the consciousness. And there's a big difference there. When the consciousness discerns something, it goes, oh, here comes the pain again, because I've been sitting for so long. Or it could have some other kind of a thought. The discernment of the transcendent wisdom is no discernment at all. It is just simply the reflection of all of these samsaric forces and karma that are appearing in the mind. And it is just seen as thus. So there's a difference there. And what we do when we sit to meditate is we put too much effort into it. We really try too hard to sit to meditate. When we begin to unravel all of the things that bind us, then we realize they aren't real. They were never there to begin with. They were a product of our own imagination. And so when you see things in this way, then if you get a realization like that, there is Dharma joy in that, to see that this is the way. We see it in a way, maybe 10% mind and 90% consciousness and ego, but still you get a little taste of it. And that's what's important. So I wanted to start with the Chan by giving you this kind of an approach before we get into it, because then we see why the masters are saying what they're saying. And when you read, like I said, with the scholars, a lot of times the scholars are looking at it and making judgments about it, but not really understanding the esoteric aspect of it, nor can they. But they will pontificate about that and treat it like a Judeo-Christian religion, like application, and trying to look at it from that point of view with some form of a bias. Now, there are very good scholars, and there's good scholars that understand this, but a lot of, let's say, those from academia, some of them are good, some of them aren't. And when you see the ones that aren't, sometimes it's frustrating, because I just close the book, I just go, okay, enough. I was listening to the person, I just say, forget it for this one. And then just go on. So there's a lot on the borders of the pages, no. But in any case, I wanted to start with this book, which is a really old book. This Professor Murty. This is like really old book, and there's a lot of books like this. There was different Chinese religious scholars, all the way back to Rice Davies, was some, and then you had the ones such as this Murty that came in, and Heinrich Dumoulin, and then there was a lot of new scholars that kind of like tried to kind of slap them around and say, oh, well, they weren't right about that. But we have to take it into the context that only recently some of the scrolls from the Dunham Caves were translated and revealed, and which shed some different light onto the story. So you have to look at some of these other ones, but some of them, they still have a very good heart. And so what they're saying isn't necessarily bad. Sometimes they're postulating based on the information that they have. And it may not be as precise as today, but a lot of the modern day scholars are too quick to pontificate, to try to put their spin on it, which is more of a factual type of a spin, and looking for historicity. Is this real? Did this actually happen, or whatever? And rather than trying to get to the heart of it, such as in the Heart Sutra, was essentially explaining the Mahayana viewpoint. And this viewpoint here is important transition. It was kind of like the monolith from 2001. And I hate to say that because they just found a monolith in one of the canyons. You know, I don't know who the heck put it there, but it's quite interesting. But there's this major, I would say, epochal change in terms of the practice, not inconsistent with what the Buddha wrote. And this is what got me with this one scholar that was saying, oh, well, this completely changed that. No, it didn't, because if you bother to look, maybe this person was looking at the new scrolls, but not really understanding what the old sutra said, and bothered to look into it to see that it is consistent all the way through. Even if you look back to some of the early Nikayas where they talk about luminous is the mind, and all of that is there already. Or Kasyapa, you know, smiling when the Buddha twirls a flower. All of these kinds of things are even pre-enlightenment of Shakyamuni, where a mendicant comes to him and talks to him, and he's starting to meditate. All of those things are all there. They wasn't something that people made up. It was just a different interpretation of it. And when you have that much time, 2,500 years, you're going to have the opportunity to be able to interpret this in different ways. People interpret it in accordance with their cultures, such as the Tibetans, the Japanese, Chinese. Chinese pushed Buddhism quite a bit in there, and essentially accepted this strange religion into their country, and really took off with it. And from there, it went to Japan. It went to different places, and the Theravadins went south with theirs, and so it's different. But we can't say that this is, you know, we can't say that there's one exact Buddhist philosophy, but we know there's common grains there. And that's what's important, is this common grains, but it's still fine. It's still there. And if the people use it and it helps them and it benefits, there's nothing wrong. You know, it's not something like you're going to say, you know, you're going to go to everlasting Naviki hell if you're not a Chan practitioner, or vice versa, if you're not a Theravadin, you know, and you're doing things. You have to practice from your heart, the sincerity of it. And I think that was what the Mahayanas brought to it, that it was not something that was written on a scroll. It was beyond words and phrases. There was something there that one connects to. And it gives a purpose, not only to life, but to mind. Where before, the thing that got people very excited, especially the Chinese initially, was that there was a way out of this, where the Confucius were looking for the perfect man, and the Taoists were looking for immortality. This was something beyond that, and saying, no, these things are illusions, but there is something that is of more significance there, which is rather than the true man of Confucianism, it was the true man of Buddhism, which is mind itself. And so these were the things that Chan was bringing forth with their studies. So I want to read a little bit here. It said, Sat Paramita Naya, the sixfold path of the highest perfection, is the Madhyamika spiritual discipline. Hold on a second. Where I want to be. Yeah, and it says, especially the last paramita, prajna, wisdom. The paramita way is distinguished from the older discipline of the Hinayana in three important respects. One was they replaced the Arhat or the Lohan with a Bodhisattva. The next is the elaboration of the older Sila, Samadhi, Prashna stadia of spiritual discipline into the sixfold path of the paramita. So it went from Sila, Samadhi, and Prashna to Dana, Sila, Kasanti, Virya, Dhyana, and Prajna. So it expanded on that to show that there was the practice was greater, and that it showed more of the elements of the practice for someone if they wanted to truly practice in the right way. And so. And then it talked about the bhumis, as one is getting through to higher realizations. Then there was a discussion of that came out of the Mahayana practice. So when we look at this, hold on a second here. We have Sila, Samadhi, and Prajna. And that was the, let's say, old school way of practicing. Nothing wrong with that at all. Sila is the morality, Samadhi is the effort that one puts in, and then Prajna is the wisdom that comes out. Then in the Mahayana, then it's Dana, which is generosity, Sila, morality again, Kasanti, which is patience, Virya, which is effort, Dhyana, which is the practice, and Prajna, which is essentially the result. But the Prajna is essentially folds back to all of the other practices and generates a bodhisattva heart from this kind of a thing. So it's like moving in this way rather than this way. So it's not a linear type thing. It's more of that. It's mixing and moving, dynamic, as reflected in mind itself, and in this way. So let me go back to this for a second. The ideal of an arhat is the highest state of Hinayana systems. It is replaced here by the ideal of a bodhisattva. Arhathood is a lower ideal of perfection that is purely negative, the cessation of suffering. And the nirvana, as conceived by them, is almost a blank state of annihilation. The bodhisattva aims at complete Buddhahood, existence as a perfect being. All beings are identical with the Buddha, and the Bodhi, the enlightenment, is implicit in them. And this is important because when we talk about Ekayana, it's implicit that the mind that you're using is just the Buddha mind. There's no other mind there. You are not really using anything other than the Buddha mind, even with the defilements that appear within there, even your bad thoughts. It is all a product of causes and conditions. And so we get to the point where we talk about the mind, the Buddha mind, is not other than pratika samappada. Causes and conditions never fail. It is why the Buddha taught the 12 dependent originations right from the very beginning. He talked about suffering. Theravadins took off with that. And when you look at the other part, then you begin to start seeing the mix of that and seeing what is happening and going, wait, this is all, well, where is that happening? It's happening in mind, not in your mind or his mind or whoever's mind. It's just happening in mind. And so when we talk about mind, it's difficult because we cannot give it a form or a locale. It is why the sutras talk about that there is no abiding. in fact, mind abides everywhere. And as a result of that, there's no abiding, because it cannot be said to be abiding anywhere if it's everywhere. And this is an important aspect of it, because then we begin to get the flavor of what mind is. We may not have the taste, but at least we have the flavor of what mind is. And that begins to allow us to contemplate. And this is very, very important, because when we're able to contemplate, then we are letting go of the consciousness that seeks a linear kind of a sequential thinking. Rather, when the mind comes to a standstill, it is not as you think it is, where all of a sudden somebody just shuts out the lights. It isn't in this way. When the mind comes to a standstill, it becomes really dynamic. It becomes aware of everything. And in accordance with your ability and your practice and your realizations, you are able to perceive more and more. It does not come from the samsaric skandha. It comes from actual mind itself. That access, which cannot be described, which is outside of the box, which makes it difficult for philosophers to be able to gather it up and say, okay, this is what it is. Because once they start saying that, you've lost it. And that's what the Chan masters said from the very beginning. They were looking at this and going, well, wait, you can't do it in this way. There is no path. So they wanted to make sure that you understood there was no specific path, because if there was a path, it would be like the yellow brick road where you'd follow it all the way to Oz. And then when you get there, then you realize that the wizard wasn't really the wizard. It doesn't work that way. The path of a bodhisattva is one first of practice. And as we begin to practice, then it becomes in the fulfilling of the vows. And so as we begin to fulfill the vows that are there, the vows that we make are not our vow. You can make it samsarically as your vow, but the deeper vow that you make is from mind itself. That you are saying this, but you're saying it from mind, and you're looking into eons and eons and eons of time, because those times are non-existent. They're only here in the present moment. So when you make your vow, you make it in the present moment. What are the vows? The vows to cut off the suffering, and that is very important. So we'll continue on here for a little bit. I wish I could read all this to you, but there's just too much material. But I think it's important for you to understand in terms of where Chan is coming from. So I'm going to skip a lot of good stuff, but just kind of give you something that's germane for today. With the Buddhas as his ideal, the Bodhisattva aims at Bodhi and undertakes the discipline of for it, Bodhicitta, Sunyata, which is emptiness, and Karuna. So this is very, very important. We've got this mixture of the emptiness and the Karuna. So essentially we're saying, okay, we take care of mind. Mind takes care. And so why wouldn't we do that? Whoever, I'm looking at the grid of people, and there's not one of you that's using a mind different than the mind that I'm using, which is the Buddha mind. Of course I care. Of course I care if you're suffering. Of course I care if you're entangled in some kind of a horrible dream or nightmare or whatever it is. It matters. It really does. And you feel it sincerely. You could feel it. You feel it from people, this this suffering. And what's important about it is that the suffering is needless. It's only our own ignorance that makes us hold on to that. Okay, so we continue. So Sunyata and Karuna are the two principal features of the bodhicitta. Sunyata is Prashna, intellectual intuition, and is identical with the absolute. So now they're saying, okay, emptiness is this intellectual intuition, but not in sense of intellectual like being smart. It is just simply that mind knows without knowing. Mind knows because it doesn't need to know anything. It is. So how could it not know? It's implicit in mind that it would be aware of things. So ergo, when you sit to meditate, you don't cogitate, you don't think. You practice awareness. What are you practicing? You're practicing mind. And so it's not that you make the mind blank. You make the mind illuminated. Illuminated means that it is aware of everything around it. It is very, very clear. It is aware. And this is how we practice, is with this awareness. So when you sit to meditate, you need only be aware without any kind of a judgment that's good, bad, or whatever. You just allow the mind to be aware. It is not sending the mind down a gopher hole and being dark. It is quite the opposite. It is putting the mind up, way up, where it is aware of more and more, not just in your little room where you're meditating, but everywhere, little by little, the mind becomes more and more expansive. And why not? It's mind. If you get dazzled by that, you mess it all up. But if you don't get dazzled by that, then the mind appears to expand. It's not really that it is truly expanding. It is just, it's revealing to you the infinite. That takes quite a bit to get to that point, to try to have the mind reveal the infinite to you. But we begin to expand the borders of mind and allow the mind to feel and use this intellectual intuition of mind itself, the knowing mind, to be able to navigate in samsara. Okay, so we continue on. Karuna is the active principle of compassion that gives concrete expression to sunyata, to emptiness in phenomena. So it's very, very interesting because it's saying Karuna is the active principle of compassion, and it gives a concrete expression, a dynamic expression to the emptiness, to the mind's emptiness, which is non-abiding in phenomena. So it is something that is applied by mind. It is why in the Heart Sutra, it is Avalokitesvara Kuan Yin Bodhisattva that is telling Sariputra, the proponent for the Theravadan school, everything is real, that everything is empty, because the end product of that from Avalokitesvara is Anyatara Samyak Sambodhi. I'm sure you've heard that word. You must have said it 10,000 times by now for some of you that have been practicing long enough. Anyatara Samyak Sambodhi. And you go, that sounds good. It took me 10 years to figure out how to say it right, if I even said it right. But the thing is that what's more important is that this represents not just emptiness, but it represents Karuna, the active principle of emptiness. It is why Kuan Yin Bodhisattva is schooling Sariputra, because that was the definitive difference between the Theravadan approach and the Mahayana approach. So this is where we go with this. All of that still is nevertheless the function of mind. And so as we begin to contemplate that, then we begin to better understand what appears to be unfathomable to us. But little by little, if we just allow the mind to contemplate these principles, it will work in the right way.
We have a question from Facebook really quickly. Just if you could remind everyone of the title of the book. They might have missed it if they're streaming. They might not have seen that part of the talk.
It's a real old book. I mean, you can look at it. It's called The Central Philosophy of Buddhism. I mean, there's a lot of books that are beyond this one now. I just happen to like the way that this author writes. And it's not a bad book. You know, some people that are modern day Buddhist scholars would poo-poo it, you know, but to me, it works. Same thing with Dermolan, you know, they're old books but they, this one here, Zen Buddhism, A History from India and China, but they serve their purpose, you know. We're not necessarily trying, and I'm sorry, let me get his name down at the bottom here. If you see it, Heinrich Dermolan. And very interesting because the picture, I don't know if Anyi Pan recognizes that picture. Do you see it? It's Damo and Hueca. So Damo's facing the wall. So, but they're good. I mean, you can look at them and read them, and it kind of gets you into reading it without getting too much into the scholastic terminology that sometimes are used. Where you know, if you could say something simple, but if you can say something that only 50 people know what the word means, you know, that's even more impressive. And so you see a lot of that kind of stuff in the, especially in the modern writing. So I'm constantly going to whatever dictionary it is to try to figure out what word they're using. And I'm not talking about Sanskrit, I'm talking about just English. But in any case, it is, you know, the coin of the realm for that. Oh, Anyi Pan put something up there, painted by a Japanese. Anyi Pan is the art history scholar, so I defer to him when he sees these. Okay, let me read a little bit more. So it says, if the first is transcendent and looks to the absolute, the second is fully immanent and looks down towards phenomena. The first is abstract, universal reality, which no determination can be predicated. It is beyond the duality of good and evil, love and hate, virtue. The second is goodness and love. So the second one he's talking about is karuna versus emptiness. And so here he's bridging it and giving emptiness a certain quality. But we can't really call it a quality or a thing. It is just simply the operation of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. And so it's not a thing, it is just how mind operates. It is, if you have an itch, you know, you could scratch it. But if you, let's say you go, oh, my shoulder itches, I need to scratch it. And the hand says, it has nothing to do with me. You know, I'm too tired to scratch you, you know, get the right hand to scratch you, you know, let me go back to sleep. It doesn't do that. It just automatically will do it, but by its nature. And that's what's important, is you see, and it flushes out the Buddha nature, makes it not something that is nihilistic, that is just simply something that has no meaning whatsoever. There is a meaning. There's a meaning, and it is why the Buddhas appear in the world, is because of the fact that there is this kind of suffering. And so it's really interesting because it goes to the heart of Mahayana. Mahayana texts cannot praise the bodhicitta too highly. Bodhicitta is this interest in caring for others and delivering other sentient beings. It is the foundation of all good and the source of all endeavor, which is virya, the right effort, the refuge of all beings, and a veritable treasure. As the one secure foundation for happiness of all beings and the one remedy of their sufferings, it is immeasurable in its purity and goodness. And it's why when you look at the Diamond Sutra, which is a chief Chan Sutra, they talk about and they say, what do you think, Subhuti? If a person was to give a treasure chest in the same amount as there was Ganges rivers, and all those Ganges rivers, the grains of sand, and all those Ganges rivers were treasure chests, would the merit of that, if they gave it to the poor, be great? And Subhuti says, of course, sure, that's 10 quadrillion treasure chest. And the Buddha said, but not as great as reciting one line of this to another, one line of the sutra to another. So there, I pass all those treasure chests over to you, so you guys are immeasurably rich by just simply hearing this. If it was that easy, that would be good, but you can still collect it. All you got to do is just contemplate it and take it to heart, and you'll see that it's immeasurably rich. Because no matter what you have, let's say you could have, I was going to say the Trump Towers, but I don't think they have too much value in them anymore. You could have something, of great riches, but you can't take it with you. It's only here for this lifetime, and then it's gone. There's no guarantee you're going to get it back in the next lifetime, or nor would you want it. Maybe you're a very good practitioner and you go to heaven. Why would you want to be weighted down with so many treasure chests? And they go like, here's some gold for you. And the people, the heaven dwellers, are going to say, what am I going to do with that? The streets are made out of gold or whatever, I'm not saying that as a gospel, but it would be something saying, but that line you were talking about, tell me that again. That's valuable, because that gets you out. That awakens the Buddha from the dream. So the Buddha is slumbering there, and under the pretext that they're a life and being. In fact, they are the landlord. Okay. Okay, now, where are we at? Oh my gosh, so much for the patriarchs today. I think last week, did we talk a little bit about Sasan and the poem Faith in Mind?
Yeah, we finished with that. But it
okay, we finished it with that, which was just kind of a splash of faith in mind, which is very interesting. And then from there, we get to Dao Shin. So I'll pull up my board again. We had Bodhidharma, Hueka, Sasan, which was faith in mind, and now we come to Dao Shin. And so let me talk a little bit about Dao Shin as we kind of push the patriarchs down a little bit. But what I was talking about is simply what they were developing in the spirit of Chan. Now, Dao Shin was from 580 to 651 CE, and the fourth patriarch. And let me see what we have here. So I have all sorts of Dao Shin stuff too. So we start with Dao Shin saying to Zen Master Sasant, I beg your compassion, please give me a way to liberation. Sasant said, who is binding you? Dao Shin says, no one is binding me. And Sasant said, then why do you seek liberation? At these words, Dao Shin was greatly enlightened. Now, if you happen to have been a great Bodhisattva for several million kalpas, if you heard that right now, you could just get a free pass right to the front of the line at Disneyland, you know, to their Star Tour ride or whatever. No, you wouldn't have to wait any longer. You would just get it. But if you poured through this sincerely, you can still make great progress just by looking at this. But we read it and we just don't get it. We don't get it. We read it and it sounds cool. You know, how did he do it? I don't know, but he did it. But we never really bothered to put the effort into just studying hard enough to do that. But he's saying to him, who is binding you? Who binds you? This is a dream. So if you're in a dream and you have a bad misfortune in the dream, in fact, where did that dream come from? Did like the boogeyman come in and put a bad dream into you? And so it begs the question whether the boogeyman is outside of mind or inside of mind. So where is that coming from? Just from mind. So there's nothing that binds you. It is just in this way. And so when we see this, then we see this in the right way. A lot of you, I'd say the majority of you heard this story before. Some of you haven't heard it. Maybe some of the people from LA haven't heard it, but it's the one of the goose in the bottle. And if you have, you hold on a second. It's time to share. You have a bottle and you put a little goose chick in there at the bottom and you feed it and you give it water. Can you all picture that? And after a while, I've never been able to perfect drawing a goose. This is as close as I can get to it. You fed it quite a bit and you get a big goose. Looks more like a Tyrannosaurus goose, but we'll use it. And the bottle opening here is very narrow. So how do you get the goose out of the bottle without breaking the bottle or harming the goose? What do you think, Jeremy? How do you get it out of the bottle? Don't break the bottle. Don't harm the goose. Do you know how?
I'm thinking.
You want to throw a lifeline to Henry over there?
Sure, Henry, if you have any thought.
No idea.
No idea? How about someone else from LA? Who do you have there from LA that can help you out here?
Well, my question is, how did the goose get into the bottle in the beginning?
Well, I said that suppose you have a bottle and you put a goose in there and you fed it and then it got bigger.
I see. So you get a baby goose inside the bottle?
Yes.
I see. Okay. The goose grow, then how do you get it out?
Who put it in the bottle? Marie, who put it in the bottle?
How about break the bottle?
No, you can't
You cannot break the
That's against the
bottle.
rule.
You cannot break the bottle. That's why.
It's very, very simple. This is ultimate Chan.
Mm.
So I can see Sue's like, I know. Most of you know that. Eric, you know, right? You've heard this before, probably.
Well, the bottle's your own delusions. It's not there.
Well, who put the goose in the bottle then?
It never was in the bottle in the first place.
Well, do you see it there, right? And you imagined it in your mind.
Well, you had your own delusions, yes.
All right. And then are you part of that delusion too?
Maybe.
Are you the goose in the bottle?
I've got a way to go.
What do you think, Jeremy? Are you the goose in the bottle? How do you get out of the bottle? Who binds you? Who binds you?
Yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Yourself.
Yourself?
Yeah.
Or is yourself a binding?
Your mind.
The mind binds you
Mm-hmm.
because of causes and conditions. I made the story up and you put the goose in the bottle. Now it's in there. Now you, by your own product of your own existence and habitual tendencies, have created a bottle around you. Just like Dao Shin had created a bottle around him and said, please, liberate me from this suffering. And he said, well, who binds you? And he couldn't find the person that bound him. This is Chan. This is why we look at this goose in the bottle to say, this is all a machination, not of you, but of mind itself. And when one realizes that, then the bottle goes. And if you keep practicing long enough, the goose is gone too. Because it's just an illusion. You bind yourself. Whatever suffering you have, you bind yourself to it. Okay, so that's an important aspect of the practice. Let's see, just a little bit more for Dao Shin. I know I'm not going to finish with him today, but I think that's an important aspect in terms of talking to you about Chan and how mind works. So these are the teachings of the fourth Chan patriarch Dao Shin. When you're sitting in meditation, watch carefully to know when your consciousness starts to move. Consciousness is always moving and flowing. So it's not saying that it shouldn't move. It's always moving and flowing. And we'll get to Hui Ning, and he talks about this too. So it's always moving and flowing. But what he's saying is that carefully know when your consciousness starts to move. What do you use to know that? Anybody? Your hand up. What do you use to know when your consciousness starts to move? Come on, Ian. Take us home.
Mind.
Awareness. Mind. A mind, but it's the awareness of the mind. It's the awareness of the mind that knows that there's something there. It's a different kind of a discernment because that discernment is awareness. And it picks up stuff. A mundane discernment would say, oh, this thought came through. But if the mind is just aware without picking up any of those conscious thoughts, then it's functioning perfectly. So it says, continues on, consciousness is always moving and flowing according to its coming and going. We must all be aware of it. There it is. We must be aware of it. Use the wisdom of the diamond to control and rule it. So he's referring here then, now we're talking about the Diamond Sutra and this deep prashna that saying to control and rule it, meaning that we use it when we need to, like Master Ling Chi said, but when we don't need to use it, you just leave it alone. So that's controlling and ruling it. So we follow a function. It enables me to articulate whatever I'm going to say, but after I say something, then I just put it down. You don't need to bring it with you. I don't need to be looking and going like, hey, Gilbert, how do you think you're doing today? You don't have to do that. You just, whatever comes up, it comes, and it comes naturally. And it says, since just like a plant, there is nothing to know. So you're always looking around, you know, you're wondering what's happening. Like you're in a retreat. Who farted? Who cares who farted? It just happened. You don't, it has nothing to do with you unless you want to sniff it and suffer from it. You just let it go, just like the other clouds that go by. Maybe it's a little bit, lingers a little longer than others, but it's all right. To know that there is nothing to know is the wisdom to know everything. Now that sounds so crazy. If you tried to tell some, I've told people like Christians something like this, and they would not having any of it. But listen to it. To know that there's nothing to know is the wisdom to know everything. And so that's the thing. I'm having a Pence moment here with a moth going by. Go, 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 go. Thank you. Okay. To know, this is the Dharma gate of the one form of the Bodhisattva. One form. Again, this is Ekayana. This is the Ekayana mind, the one mind. And a Bodhisattva belongs to that. And so then the next question was, what kind of a person is a Chan master? So what do you think? What kind of a person is a Chan master? What kind of a question is that? And Dao Shin said, someone who is not disturbed either by chaos or serenity is a person with the know-how of a good Chan practice. So in the midst of chaos, there's serenity, and in the midst of serenity, there's still chaos. They're not separate things. The mind is very, very clear in terms of what is appearing, but it doesn't cling to anything. It doesn't abide. And that's the important part. It doesn't abide in serenity. And they go, well, how do you know he's a good Chan master? Because he's been sitting there and he hasn't moved. And he has a serene face. No. When one always dwells in tranquility, the mind perishes. But if you're always in a state of discernment, then the mind scatters chaotically. The Lotus Sutra says, the Buddha himself dwells in the great vehicle. So what is the great vehicle? Mahayana. The power of meditation and of wisdom gives remarkable splendor to the dharmas of which he's acquired. These he uses to save all beings. See, that is it. And so when we look at the Buddha mind, it is just in this way. It is not just simply that. As a bodhisattva, we're developing this type of inconceivable mind. But this is the path that we take. So when we take this path, we understand and we go full circle to the vows that we made. You know, I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. No, I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Those are the vows. Those are what generates the prajna and the karuna to fulfill the vows. When we practice in this way, it will work because pratika samappada cause and conditions never fail. But if you pick and choose and you say, I want to deliver this one, but I could care less about that one, then it's not working in that way. You have an interest in the suffering of all sentient beings. One last one. How can we be enlightened to the nature of things and our minds attain pure, lucid purity. Dao Shin said, neither by trying to meditate on the Buddha, nor trying to grab hold of the mind, nor seeing the mind, nor by analyzing the mind, nor by reflection, nor by discernment, nor by dispersing confusion, but through identification with the natural rhythm of things. This is very beautiful what he's saying, because he's saying you see the natural rhythm of things. And in the mind, what is the natural rhythm of things? What drives everything? All right, Eon, I'll give you one last chance here. You got a half credit on the last one.
Pratitya Samutpada. Causes
Causes
and conditions never fail.
Causes and conditions never fail. So the causes and conditions never fail. This is how everything works. When we see that, we know, okay, I know why this person's angry at me, because the last time I saw him, I lost my temper. Or I know why this person is being nice to me, because even when they were angry with me, I was nice to them. I've had students in the past that really got angry at me for different things. And I still accepted them. I still accepted them and was patient with them. And later they became my best students. And it was pratika samappada. Instead of me cutting them off and saying, you're dead to me, come back in another kalpa and I'll try again. No, I was still there. And they saw that and they came back and they really felt that very strongly in terms of that. It is the way that that we are. Okay. I'll leave it to questions now. And so if you have any questions. I'm getting a moth here. Okay. No questions?
Let's see.
By the way, did anybody find this too deep today?
I like it. I mean, of course, the goose and the bottle story, was unfamiliar. And of course, it's so interesting that my instinctive way of trying to analyze your question, I knew wasn't going to get me to where where the answer would be. But, I just couldn't break the rules of this world, or my mind envisioning, okay, well, is there a way, with the bottle and the goose, is there a way to separate these two things? And thinking about it very rationally in the rules of what I've, learned through the senses, through physics or through biology or whatever method you want to think about. It's so interesting. I was reflecting a lot on a simple thing that I think you said last week from Master Sheng, which was give the body to the cushion and the mind to the method. I've been thinking about that a lot. It's very simple, but I really love the word give. And it seems very similar to what we were just talking about with this whole goose and the bottle thing. It's like, take your hands out of it. Stop trying to mold it into something. Stop trying to feel like you have to do it. I feel like that's when you asked me the question why I knew I wasn't going to get the answer immediately, was because I could feel my mind trying to use my hands to find the answer. I'm like, that's not going to be the way to do it. And in meditation practice, over the course of this week, I just kept thinking on that word give the body, and giving to me has very little to do with making an effort to make it happen. If you're trying to make it happen, I don't feel like I'm really giving it. I'm more like making it. I'm forcing it. I'm trying to put myself into what I'm doing. The idea of give is like an offering, here, Like you have to let go, like to really be free of it, to give it. And I could tell in a lot of ways that I'm still, as much as I'm aware of concepts, where I would like to focus more attention and more awareness is on being in that space of being able to be more giving, and you know, trying to get away from, you know, feeling like there's so much effort that needs to be made.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I kind of was picking on you. I would say probably 90% of the people that are listening in have heard that story, you know, but you always give it to people new, and the ones that have heard it before get another little aspect of it, you know, when they listen to it again, and then they use it and they put it in their repertoire of things that they can use to talk to other people about. And I, you know, I think that it's a really powerful one, because you look at it and you see it, it's kind of like those Chinese finger traps, which really, I don't think were Chinese, but they were bamboo, woven bamboo. You stick your fingers in and you try to pull them out, but you can't, because the woven bamboo tightens on the fingers, and you can't let go. But if you just relax, then it becomes self-evident that the weave is what's binding you. But in fact, there's no binding. It's only the stress you put to do that. And the same thing, what Wendy was saying, how do you not cling, is that you see things as they are, as they naturally occur. This is very, very important to all of you, that you have to see things as they naturally occur. You see it and say, well, of course, this person is crying because they lost their wallet or their phone or whatever it is. That's natural that people will do that. Or they're laughing at this because of this, you know, and you see the world as it is, exactly as it is, not where you're trying to put any kind of your own flavor into it. You just see the things. And as you begin to see things in this way, what happens is that it enables you to be able to be aware of the world. And then from that awareness comes a wisdom in order to how to harmonize and to make the proper responses through body, speech, and mind to anything that's happening. So you become aware of the naturalness. And that's what I really liked about what he had said, was that there's just this naturalness to everything. And it follows, and as Ian pointed out, pratika samappada, causes and conditions never fail. So if you plant a melon seed, then you get a melon plant. It's just this way. So whatever you put, if you plant hatred, you get hatred back. That's no surprise. It's natural. So when you see the world this way, it allows you not to get stuck in that finger trap. And you're able to relax in the world. We put so much pressure on ourselves. We have to do this, do that, do whatever we have to do. Well, you do what you can, and you can't, and what you can't do, you don't do. But if you can do it, good, you know. But this is the way of the world, and we see that, and we see, why are people laughing? Why, you know, sometimes I see people and they laugh a lot, but I know they're insecure. That's why they laugh. Sometimes people are just happy. My sister is a very happy person, and she's always smiling and laughing. That's her nature. It's not a nervousness, it's just naturalness in her. But you just see the people, and whatever is coming, you have a feel, an intuitive feel for what is appearing in mind at that moment. And you understand that this is mind, that this is all happening. So you begin to condition the mind. I hate to use that word condition, but you condition to remind yourself you're a practitioner and that this is all mind. And then it all begins to fit, because as you begin to do that, you're no longer making little chops here and there of opinions or things that we're doing. Everything just flows very, very naturally. And that's exactly what Dao Shin was saying, was that this is just the natural flow of things. So what do? You go with the flow. Not bad. and you deal with it. This is, like, I would say, not exactly in the annals of history a stellar year, but we just go with the flow of it. Whatever it is, we can deal with it, and we understand everything changes, because that's what we also understand is impermanence. So when we understand these, but more importantly, that everything belongs to mind, that gives you an incredible power, a really incredible power as to how to live in this world, so that you're not overwhelmed by all the different things that can happen here, whether it's success or failures. You don't have to worry about that. Okay. Any other questions? No questions today?
Something.
Yes.
Eric, you can go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a follow-up here. You can't be attached to being attached, because a part of the big problem is fear of loss, whatever it is. So that's a natural reaction too. So we have to flow with our own fears about loss, because that we have to start acknowledging impermanence. And that can be tough.
It is tough if you buy into this world as being real. If you buy into the world as being empty, then it's not so tough, because we aren't trying to take a Polaroid of our life and carrying it with us forward to compare it to what's happening now. We can't do that. I mean, I could carry a Polaroid of myself when I was 19. I'll go, wait a second, I don't look 19 anymore, and I could lament about the changes, but I understand it is just naturally, that's the way it goes. So whatever it is, it is. But the trick is not to play the game. It's like the game of tic-tac-toe, and you go second, you're never going to win that game.
Well, that's part of the growth. I mean, one could say in response, are you being too sanguine about losses of values or whatever? I mean,
it is in this way, and this is the thing I won't tempt fate with, is whatever I cling to, I suffer.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. Okay. So maybe that's part of learning Paticca Samuppada, So.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm not at the state where I'd say, okay, I don't have to, I'm above suffering. No, but I understand everything is impermanent, which helps a lot, especially if you're in a very bad shape, such as I was earlier this year, and I was in great pain, like 24/7 pain. But I use my practice to be able to understand everything is impermanent. No, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to me as I die? And no, but I'm looking at it going like, that's not that bad. I mean, not that I'm welcoming it and say, oh, Gilbert died yesterday because he tempted fate, but I'm just saying that in terms of looking at it, we know that this body will give out. So we shouldn't be fearful about those things. We have to see them realistically. And that what it does is it makes this breath that you take right now matter. And the breath after that, you don't waste those breaths whatsoever. You live this life. This is really, really important, but you don't cling to the things that are good in your life or fear the things that are bad that could happen. You just live the life, and you live it as best as you can. And this is really, really important. To me, I don't want anybody to look at me if I was in a casket and say, oh, he looks so restful. I want them to say, wow, he used up every bit of his body. He looks all shot. I would rather look that way because I used up every single bit of whatever my time here was and tried not to waste it. And so when we look at it, we see it differently. We see from the eyes of a bodhisattva versus somebody that's caught up in the sentient beings and has the fears and has to confront all of those things. You know, you have certain ailments, I know, Eric, you know, and that's just the way it is. That's how you kind of came out of the box karmically. But looking at some people, you're still way ahead of the game, you know. And so we just look at things as to where we're at, what's happening. We just understand there's reasons behind these, and then you try to do your best when you're here. You know, if you're dealing with people and they have cancer, sometimes the people, when they have cancer, there's some great epiphanies that they get. I mean, really, really great epiphanies, because they're able to look at it and look at the possibility of death in the face. But I have not known anyone that had cancer that didn't try to fight. You know, maybe at the very end, they can give up the body, but it doesn't mean that they give into the fear. They try to do that. They try to do it, but sometimes the people, they still have fear out of ignorance, and that's where you have to help them. And so you see this world differently. There was, I think it was Sogyal Rinpoche, somebody came to him. It was a lady that had gone to all these natural healers and stuff, and she had cancer, and she had been only given like so many months to live. And she went to him and asked him and said, I want to tell you that I have cancer. And he said, well, that's a wonderful thing. And she said, what? And he said, that's wonderful. That's good news. And she said, what are you talking about? Didn't you hear I have cancer? And he said, yes. He says, but there's so few people that know that the end is near. You have the opportunity to understand that the end is near, and to set right all the things that you need to do in your life to make the adjustments and corrections, because you know that every breath is precious. And so it's a matter of how we look at things in terms of seeing it, rather than seeing what we lost, but seeing what we have right now in this moment, what we can do with this breath. It's very, very important. That's how we look at the world. And that's how we don't attach to the things.
Thank you, Gilbert.
You're welcome. Anything else? All right. Then I'll go back in the box for another week, and I'll appear here again. If not, you didn't have enough of me, then tomorrow I'll be giving my class, and it's going to be on Manjushri, and a very, very interesting lecture on Manjushri and his practice. We started last week, but we're going to go into the Sutra this week. So, yeah, please have a good week. Stay calm and safe. You know, I give you all blessings. Amitofo. Bow. See you next time. Some of you are taking off now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Gilbert.
Thank you
Gilbert.
very much.
Gilbert.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gilbert.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Practice steady hard, okay?
Thank you, Gilbert.
Okay, take care. I'm leaving now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Provided I can figure out how to leave. That's one. There it is. Okay.